My name is Jose, and for years, I thought I had earned the respect of my team. I worked hard, stayed late, solved problems nobody else could touch. I thought my talent and dedication mattered, but I was wrong. It started last Monday, in the middle of a project meeting. My suggestions were dismissed, my ideas ridiculed, and my expertise questioned in front of everyone. "Jose, maybe you're overthinking this," said Carla, my supposed teammate, with a smirk. "Yeah, maybe we should just let the others handle it," chimed in Raul, clearly trying to impress the manager. I swallowed my anger, forcing a smile. "Fine," I said, though every word felt like fire in my chest. Later, I overheard them talking in hushed voices. "He's good, but he always thinks he's smarter than everyone else," Carla whispered. I realized they weren't just dismissing me. They were plotting to downgrade my influence. I left the office that day with a knot in my stomach. I could have let it slide. I could have let them win. But I didn't, because they didn't know something. The big client, the one worth millions, was about to test their arrogance. And I would be the one standing in the spotlight while they watched. The next morning, I arrived early, pretending to focus on small tasks, quietly observing my team. They were smug, chatting about how they had cornered me, thinking I would crumble, but I had already begun planning. I knew the client's next meeting would be critical. The project they cared about? I had designed a key solution months ago, one that could make or break the deal. They had overlooked it, assuming I couldn't handle it alone. The irony? Only I knew the full potential of the solution. As the client arrived, my team fumbled with outdated slides and poorly prepared points. Their confidence crumbled under the first few questions. I watched silently, noting every mistake, every hesitation, every blunder they couldn't fix. When the client finally asked for clarification, I stepped in. "Allow me to explain," I said calmly. Suddenly, all eyes turned to me. The room fell silent. The client listened, intrigued. I walked them through the solution step by step. Every question they asked, I answered with precision. Every concern they raised, I dissolved with clear evidence and logic. By the end of the meeting, the client's nod of approval was unmistakable. I realized in that moment they had downgraded me, underestimated me, and yet I was the only one capable of saving the deal. And the look on my team's faces? Priceless. After the meeting, the client pulled me aside privately. "Jose," they said, "your approach is exactly what we need. We trust your judgment completely." I smiled faintly. Inside, a fire was burning. My team had tried to belittle me. But here was proof that competence speaks louder than arrogance. Back in the office, I could see the whisper start. Carla avoided my gaze. Raul's confident smirk vanished. They realized finally that they had misjudged me. But I didn't say anything. I let them stew. I had learned long ago that patience and observation are far more powerful than immediate revenge. That night, I stayed late, preparing detailed reports and presenting solutions in a polished format. The client had been impressed, yes, but I wasn't done. I needed to ensure my value was undeniable, to make them understand that without me, the project would have failed entirely. The next day, the manager called a meeting. My team shifted nervously as I walked in, carrying my prepared report. I spoke confidently, calmly presenting every detail, every recommendation. The client joined the call remotely, praising the clarity and insight. By the end, it was clear. The client had chosen me over the entire team. And my team's faces? Shock and disbelief painted every expression. For the first time, I felt a quiet satisfaction. They had tried to degrade my ability. They had failed. And I had just stepped into the spotlight they thought they deserved. The rest of the week was tense. My team tried to regain control, offering suggestions, corrections, and explanations, but the client ignored them. Every decision they proposed was dismissed. Every idea I suggested was accepted. I realized something critical. They hadn't just underestimated me. They had exposed themselves as incompetent. Carla attempted to confront me privately. "Jose, don't get cocky. This client isn't yours yet," she said. I smiled. "I'm not cocky. I just know who can deliver results." Raul, desperate, tried to undermine me during a project update. I let him speak, nodding politely, then corrected the errors calmly, showing client a precise path forward. Every small victory was mine. Every mistake they made was a reminder of their arrogance. By Friday, the client had called me directly. Jose, we want you to lead this project. The team can assist, but you are in charge. I leaned back in my chair, a quiet smirk forming. The people who tried to downgrade my ability had been exposed completely. And the best part? They had no idea the next stage of my plan had already begun. Because competence is powerful, but strategy? Strategy is unstoppable. That weekend, I reviewed every aspect of the project. My team had left gaps, mismanaged details, and overlooked risks. I meticulously corrected everything, creating a flawless roadmap. I realized this was more than just winning a client. It was about establishing authority, proving my value, and ensuring no one could ever question me again. The client's trust in me grew with each update. They began requesting my input directly, bypassing my team entirely. Back in the office on Monday, the tension was palpable. My team had overheard the client praising me. Their whispers and sideways glances confirmed what I already knew. Their arrogance had backfired spectacularly. I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. Every step I took reinforced my reputation. Every solution I delivered highlighted their failures. By the end of the day, it was undeniable. The client had chosen me over the entire team. The same team that had tried to downgrade my abilities now had no choice but to follow my lead. And as I sat at my desk, I realized something important. This wasn't just a victory for me. It was a lesson. Never let anyone underestimate your skill. And never let arrogance blind those around you to the truth. Because sometimes the quiet ones are the most dangerous and the most brilliant. The next week, I noticed subtle changes. The team's confidence had shaken. Carla avoided eye contact. Raul muttered excuses. And even the manager seemed hesitant when discussing the project. I knew I had momentum, but I also knew arrogance could be persistent. My team might try to reclaim control or undermine me again. I had to be careful. I started documenting everything. Every communication with the client, every adjustment to the project plan, and every suggestion from my team. It wasn't about revenge. It was about strategy. If they tried to discredit me, I'd have proof of my competence. The client called midweek for a follow-up. Jose, your updates are impressive. We trust your judgment completely. Can you present the final proposal next week? I smiled internally. This was my chance to cement authority. Back at the office, the team attempted to assert themselves during a planning session. I let them speak, nodded politely, and then methodically corrected every misstep. By the end of the session, the client approval was clear. My team had no influence. For the first time, I realized something important. Respect isn't demanded. It's earned through consistent results. And those who tried to downgrade my ability, they had just been given a masterclass in humility. I leaned back at my desk. Patience, strategy, and competence were far more powerful than any act of arrogance. And the next stage of the plan was already forming in my mind. Thursday brought the first big test. The client requested a high-stakes presentation worth millions, with top executives watching. My team assumed they would lead. You stay quiet, Jose. This is our chance, Carla said with a smirk. I nodded politely, hiding the fire inside. I had a different idea. I arrived early, reviewed every slide, every financial figure, and every projected outcome. I memorized every detail, anticipating every question. When the meeting began, my team stumbled immediately. Their numbers didn't add up. Slides were mismatched. Confidence faltered. I raised my hand. May I clarify? The room went silent. All eyes turned to me. Step by step, I corrected errors, provided insights they hadn't considered, and delivered a solution so precise it left client impressed and the executives nodding in approval. By the end of the presentation, the client spoke directly to me. Jose, we want you to lead this. Your team can assist, but you are in charge. My team's faces fell. Shock, humiliation, the arrogance that once shielded them had vanished. I realized in that moment, their attempts to downgrade me had only highlighted my value. Sometimes being underestimated isn't a disadvantage. It's an opportunity. And the client had just handed me the ultimate opportunity. After presentation, I returned to the office and began strategizing the next steps. I needed to ensure that my authority was unquestionable. I reviewed past mistakes my team had made, identifying gaps and inefficiencies. Every overlooked risk, every delayed response, every miscalculated detail became a point of correction. I prepared detailed updates for the client, showcasing not just solutions but proactive strategies. They responded immediately, impressed by the foresight and clarity. Meanwhile, my team tried to intervene. "Jose, maybe we should handle clients' requests ourselves," Raul said hesitantly. I smiled calmly. "I appreciate it, but we're working as a team and I'm leading this project. Let's coordinate carefully to ensure success." The subtle sting of reality hit them. Their arrogance had been replaced by cautious obedience. By the end of the week, the client had requested daily updates from me, bypassing the team entirely. Every email, every call, every decision was routed through me. I leaned back in my chair, satisfied. The project wasn't just safe, it was under my control. And the people who tried to diminish my abilities? They had no idea the quiet recovery they had triggered would end with them following my lead. Competence and strategy, I realized, could not be ignored, and I intended to prove it to everyone. The weekend was my planning time. I knew my team would try to regain influence, but I had the advantage. They had underestimated the depth of my preparation. I created contingency plans, prepared detailed reports, and anticipated potential obstacles. I wasn't just leading the project. I was anticipating every problem before it even arose. On Monday, the client called. "Jose, we reviewed your updates. Impressive work. We trust your judgment entirely. Please proceed with implementation." I felt a quiet satisfaction. My team's whispers and attempts to assert dominance had failed completely. Back at the office, I observed them carefully. Every glance, every sideways look, every nervous comment revealed their unease. They realized they were no longer in control. Carla tried to regain influence during a team discussion. I let her speak, then calmly presented my analysis, pointing out risks she hadn't considered. The room nodded along with me. Raul tried the same later in the day, but the client's direct messages praising my updates undermined his authority completely. By the end of the day, the message was clear. Competence, preparation, and calm strategy always outweigh arrogance and false confidence. And the quiet satisfaction? Watching them realize they had misjudged me from the very beginning. The next week, the project reached its final critical phase. The client scheduled a review, expecting a seamless solution. My team, still reeling from their earlier failures, hoped to reclaim credit. I let them speak first. They fumbled through numbers, explanations, and justifications. I corrected minor details with a smile, letting the client see their mistakes without overt confrontation. Then I presented the final solution. Step by step, data-backed, flawless in execution. Every question was anticipated. Every doubt dissolved. By the end of the meeting, the client leaned forward. "Jose, we trust your leadership completely. Proceed as you see fit. The team will support you, but you are in charge." I sat back quietly. The irony was perfect. The team that had downgraded me now followed my direction completely. I realized something important. Their arrogance had been their undoing. My preparation, patience, and skill had earned respect without confrontation. And the project? Safe, successful, entirely under my control. Sometimes being underestimated is the best advantage anyone could have. I smiled faintly. The quiet ones, I reminded myself, are often the most dangerous and the most brilliant. After the client meeting, the office felt different. The subtle arrogance and whispers of my team had vanished, replaced by cautious respect. Every glance they cast my way was measured, almost fearful. I knew it wouldn't last if I didn't consolidate my authority. The client's trust was growing, and the team was still capable of subtle sabotage. Patience alone wouldn't guarantee control. I needed a strategy. I began documenting every interaction, every suggestion from my team, every detail of the project. If they tried to take credit or blame me, I would have evidence. Not just evidence, irrefutable proof of competence and foresight. Meanwhile, I started refining the project's final stages. Small adjustments, overlooked risks, and potential client concerns were all addressed before anyone could notice. One afternoon, Carla tried to intervene during a status call. "Jose, perhaps we should." I smiled faintly. "Thank you, Carla. I've already accounted for that possibility. Let's proceed with the plan we discussed." Her face fell. Raul's nervous glance confirmed they realized the shift of power was permanent. The client, meanwhile, continued sending direct messages praising my solutions and clarity. Every note reinforced my authority, subtly undermining the team's attempts to regain influence. By the week's end, it was clear the client had chosen me, and the team, they had no choice but to follow. Sometimes being underestimated isn't a weakness. It's the perfect cover for an unstoppable plan. The next client call was a high-stakes discussion with multiple executives. My team assumed they would be leading, but I had already prepared thoroughly, anticipating every question, every objection. And those who underestimate quietly, they can be unstoppable. Back at the office, I began documenting every interaction and adjustment to the project. My team's past mistakes, overlooked details, and attempt at sabotage were carefully recorded. This wasn't about revenge. It was about strategy. If they tried to reclaim authority, I would have evidence to defend my position. Carla tried subtle interference, suggesting a better approach during a planning session. I nodded politely, then outlined a more efficient solution based on data and analysis. Raul attempted something similar, but the client's direct emails praising my updates nullified his influence completely. By the week's end, my team understood fully. They no longer controlled the project or the client's perception. Every decision, every approval, and every client interaction ran through me. I leaned back in my chair, quietly satisfied. Competence, patience, and strategy had worked better than confrontation ever could. And the team that tried to downgrade my ability, they had unknowingly built the foundation of my authority. Sometimes, the smartest moves are invisible until the moment of triumph. The project entered its final phase, and the stakes were higher than ever. The client scheduled a review meeting with multiple executives. My team, still smarting from earlier failures, assumed they would take center stage. I let them begin. Predictably, they stumbled over details, miscalculated figures, and presented incomplete explanations. I stayed silent, letting the errors reveal themselves. When the client paused, I spoke. "Here's the optimal solution," I said calmly, walking through every step, every metric, and every contingency plan. The client's responses were immediate and positive. "Jose, this is the clarity we needed. Lead the final implementation." The team's faces showed disbelief and humiliation. Their arrogance had blinded them, and their mistakes had reinforced my authority. Later, I reviewed the project one final time, ensuring nothing was overlooked. The client's trust in me was absolute. I realized that this wasn't just about winning a project. It was about establishing credibility, authority, and respect that couldn't be undermined. And the team who had tried to downgrade me, they now understood the cost of arrogance. Sometimes, respect is earned silently, with preparation, intelligence, and impeccable execution, and they had no choice but to follow. By the following Monday, the project was fully under my control. The client requested updates exclusively from me, bypassing my team entirely. I noticed subtle signs of resignation in Carla and Raul. The smug arrogance that had dominated the office weeks earlier had vanished completely. I continued refining operations, preparing reports, and anticipating every potential client question. Each update reinforced my leadership competence and authority. The team attempted minor interventions, but each one was met with calm correction or subtle evidence highlighting the gaps in their proposals. I realized something important. The client had chosen me over the team not because of arrogance or conflict, but because of trust, clarity, and skill. And the quiet satisfaction of watching my team realize their misjudgment, priceless. The project was safe. My authority was unquestioned. and the client's confidence in me had become unshakable. Sometimes the greatest victories aren't loud. They're strategic, invisible, and unstoppable. And the team that tried to downgrade me, they had unknowingly paved the way for my ultimate triumph. The final review meeting arrived. The client scheduled an executive video call to assess the completed project. My team, still smarting from their previous failures, assumed they would be the stars. They began the call confidently, but their arrogance quickly crumbled. Slides were misaligned, numbers inconsistent, and their explanations vague. I stayed silent, observing every misstep, letting their mistakes speak for themselves. Then the client paused, looking directly at me. "Jose, could you clarify?" I spoke calmly, confidently, outlining every solution, every contingency, and every optimized process. My team watched silent, as the client's nods and questions flowed entirely through me. By the end of the meeting, the client addressed me directly. "Jose, we want you to lead this project completely. The team will assist, but all key decisions go through you." Carla and Raul's faces drained of color. Shock, humiliation, and disbelief combined in every glance. Their arrogance had been the perfect setup for my ultimate authority. I realized something important. Respect isn't demanded. It's earned through preparation, patience, and competence. And those who try to downgrade others often create the perfect opportunity for their own downfall. Sometimes being underestimated is the most powerful advantage anyone can have. Back at the office, the atmosphere had shifted completely. The whispers of arrogance were replaced by careful compliance. My team no longer tried to challenge me, and every suggestion they made was met with calm analysis and correction. The client's trust in me had become absolute. Every email, every request, and every decision came through me. Carla attempted a subtle challenge in a planning session. "Jose, maybe we should." I smiled. "Thank you, but I've already accounted for that scenario. Let's proceed with the plan we reviewed with the client." Her face revealed her realization. She no longer held influence. Raul's attempts to regain authority were equally futile. The client's praise and direct communication made it clear who the true leader was. I leaned back in my chair quietly, feeling a deep satisfaction. My team had underestimated me, trying to downgrade my abilities, and had unwittingly strengthened my authority. The project was secure, the client was confident, and my position unshakable. Sometimes the most brilliant victories are quiet ones, executed with strategy, patience, and intelligence. Over the next week, I began finalizing the implementation phase. Every potential risk had been addressed, every detail double-checked. The client was consistently impressed with my foresight and precision. The team tried minor interventions, but I calmly guided corrections, demonstrating competence at every step. They were powerless to undermine me now. One afternoon, the client called privately. "Jose, we've never worked with anyone so thorough. Your leadership is remarkable. Please continue overseeing this project entirely." I smiled faintly. The quiet triumph was sweet. They had tried to downgrade me, and yet here I stood, the undisputed authority, trusted completely. I walked through the office, observing my team. Carla avoided eye contact. Raul muttered excuses under his breath. They understood fully that their arrogance had failed spectacularly. I realized something important. Patience, strategy, and intelligence often outperform confrontation and ego. The project was not only safe, it was thriving, and the people who tried to diminish me, they had paved the way for my ultimate authority. As the project reached completion, the client requested a final implementation report. I compiled every detail meticulously, highlighting successes, contingencies, and potential expansions. The team attempted minor input, but it was clear their influence was gone. Every decision, every report, and every client interaction came through me. The client praised a comprehensive approach, specifically mentioning my leadership and foresight. "Jose, you've managed this project flawlessly. We trust you entirely." My team's faces reflected shock and humiliation. Carla and Raul realized the extent of their misjudgment. They had tried to undermine me, but every attempt had only reinforced my competence and authority. I leaned back quietly, This wasn't about revenge. It was about justice and validation. The team that had downgraded my ability had inadvertently demonstrated exactly why I deserved trust and respect. Sometimes, victories are silent, invisible, and complete, and the satisfaction of watching arrogance crumble under competence? Priceless. Sitting in my office that evening, I reflected on the journey. The team that had tried to downgrade me had underestimated patience, intelligence, and preparation. Their arrogance had been the perfect setup for my success. The client's trust was absolute. The project had been delivered flawlessly. Every risk anticipated, every detail optimized, every contingency addressed. I realized a lesson. Respect isn't demanded, it's earned. Competence speaks louder than arrogance. Strategy triumphs over impulse, and those underestimated quietly often become unstoppable. Carla and Raul had learned their lesson the hard way. Their attempt to undermine me had only secured my authority. I leaned back, smiling faintly. The quiet one should never be underestimated. Jose was no longer just a team member. I was the authority, the leader, the trusted guide for a multi-million-dollar project. And anyone who doubted me, they had seen painfully and clearly that skill, patience, and intelligence will always prevail. The story was complete. Justice had been served. Competence had triumphed. And the client had chosen wisely. The team that tried to downgrade me had unwittingly created the perfect opportunity for my ultimate success.